And welcome, everyone. Thank you, panelists. I'm going to ask each of you to briefly just kind of introduce yourself to the group, and then we'll jump into it. So I'll start with you, Gil.
Hi, my name's Commander Alex Holston. Just Alex is great. I'm a Chief Medical Informatics Officer, currently working at DoD's Healthcare Management Systems Modernization Program Management Office here in Roslyn, Virginia. I'm also a neonatologist at Walter Reed.
All right, great. Gil?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gil Alterovitz. I'm Director of Artificial Intelligence, and I'm over at the Department of Veteran Affairs, focusing on research and development. Yeah, happy to be here.
Dr. P.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Pragyansmita Nayak. I'm called Dr. P. I'm a Chief Data Scientist with Hitachi Vantara Federal. I have over 20 years of experience with software development and artificial intelligence. Machine learning was my PhD thesis topic, and I enjoy it, so I'm still on with it. Glad to be here. Look forward to this.
All right, great. I'm going to actually start with a question that I'm going to ask each of you in turn. And that's basically just give me a flavor, give me a feeling for where you're seeing the most success with AI and what that looks like in terms of platforms and how it's being developed and stuff like that. I'll start with you, Dr. P.
Sure. So as I said, I have been working with AI for over 20 years now, and or rather I've been working with the subdomain of machine learning. And looking at any kind of problem, if there is sufficient data and there are questions which cannot be theoretically answered or empirically answered, that's a place where we can always look at the existing data and see if there is a potential for machine learning with it. So where there's data and there's a good question to be answered, or there's an answer you're looking for, that's where I can see a machine learning potential application there.
Okay, great. And Gil, in terms of your work with the VA and things like that, what's working great for you?
Yes, so I think we're seeing several different application areas in the VA. So one of the ones that we're investing is trustworthy AI. So AI that you can make sure that you can trust in terms of not having biases. One that can be useful in terms of explaining the data, so you can explain the results of the model to the patient, to the physician. As well as AI that is scalable. So we have the largest integrated healthcare system in the country, and end up training more than 70% of physicians go through training at the VA at one point or another. So there's a lot of opportunities for engagement, and being able to scale is a really important problem. So platforms that enable those characteristics are ones that we're particularly interested in.
Okay, cool. And Alex?
I'm going to take a slightly different approach to answer that question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We believe it's not about the IT. It's not about artificial intelligence. It's about the patient in front of us. And where we're seeing a lot of benefit, at least within the medical side of the Department of Defense, is allowing that space between the physician and the patient to shorten by using AI to do the stuff in the back behind the physician, rather than having the physician have that electronic health record between them and the patient. So by putting the patient in the center of the engagement of where we're seeing a lot of benefit, it's been helpful on the DoD healthcare side. So what do I mean by that? What's examples of that? So an example of that would be, let's let our pathologists spend a little bit less time screening slides by having imaging that can highlight where they think cancer might be on the slides, so they can spend more time talking to the provider. Let's automate some of the processes, which traditionally we don't think of artificial intelligence doing for us. We think of it answering questions for us. But why don't we have it automate the simple stuff so that your physicians can spend more time on the higher cognitive stuff and actually talk to their patients again, rather than having the electronic health record between them and the patient.
Cool. That sounds awesome. So the next question I have is that a lot of organizations, AI is, an evolving technology, obviously getting a lot of, attention nowadays. How are you seeing, or in terms of on-ramping, agencies getting started with AI? How would you advise them to jump into that? And I'll start with you, Gil, on that question.
Okay, so we're looking at a number of different approaches there. One is my team's been working on developing a number of these AI playbooks as a way to see what are the steps toward having an agency work toward having pilots first, and then doing different opportunities in terms of either acquisitions or developing in-house, and then further scaling up. So playbooks is sort of one approach that we're looking at as an on-ramp. And there are about 3 playbooks. Feel free to come talk afterwards to explain the different playbooks and what they mean and how they're different. And then there are these tech sprints. AI tech sprints are a way that we are looking as an on-ramp by engaging with industry, with academia and others around some open data that we make. And we make that open data available, and during approximately a 3-month sprint, which we just finished, there's going to be a demo day with the Department of Commerce December 10, where someone will present the results. We're able to see how companies go about using AI and developing tools, and that is a potential on-ramp toward future development as well.
Okay. Would either of you like to add to that?
Sure. We often get 2 types of questions. One is that we have so much data, can you help us come up with a machine learning application for it? And the other case is, we have this problem, can machine learning help us here? Or we don't know what the problem is, can machine learning help us here? So that's I added a 3rd question there. So what we do often is, we try to get an understanding of what are the specific answers the stakeholders are trying to answer, and based on that, trying to go back and see if there are matching data sets available which can help answer that question. If not, can that data be collected in some form? So trying to get that gap between what is the answer that they're trying to solve, and I'm strategically not using the word problem here. I'm saying we are looking for answers rather than looking for problems here. So what is the end goal that a particular stakeholder or an agency is trying to get at, and then trying to bridge the gap between the data that is available and the kind of processes and algorithms that can be used to address that problem.
Okay. And Alex, anything you'd like to add? Or?
Well, I would advise approaching it the same way that Department of Defense has, in terms of how as you and an agency approach creating your own AI or artificial intelligence platforms. And what the DoD elected to do is not put all the ideas in the Pentagon, rather just create a center that allows people to engage with them in a platform where you can bring your ideas to the center and then execute them. So let me say that with a little bit more detail. So the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center is currently under the J6 or the J6 equivalent at the Pentagon, where cybersecurity becomes the first and foremost important part. So you have to have a secure platform, at least when you're operating within the federal government, I feel, when you're analyzing large amounts of data. And then they did a very important thing, at least within the health part of it, led by Captain Hassan Teta. They said, we're not going to have the ideas. We're not going to sit there and ask the questions and find the answers. We're just going to simply create the platform where you can bring your data, have it analyzed by big computers, big power computing for you, and then get your own answers. Because if you centralize both the platform and the ideas, I think your agency will lead to failure. If you centralize the platform, but then have a distributed, I call it, and there's not a better name for it, just a distributive idea network, let the ideas be spread out, then I think you have true power of artificial intelligence. I find the best ideas typically, and I know I'll get in trouble for this, don't come from Washington, D.C. And I live in Washington, D.C., so I'm allowed to say it. But they come from the nurses and the doctors out there in Seattle, Washington. They come from the doc in Germany who's trying to figure out how to do international care and transport a patient back to the U.S. People that are on their feet in the front lines and on the deck plate taking care of patients day by day. I want to hear what their ideas are and then provide them the platform to research those ideas with artificial intelligence.
All right, great. So next question. I mean, obviously a lot of momentum behind AI, but what kind of barriers and what kind of resistance have you found in the introduction of AI? What kind of things are people bringing to the fore that they're concerned about or worried about or things like that? And I'll start right here to my left with you, Alex.
The barrier came, and I'll just give the example of our first reach into AI, if I may,
Sure.
at DIMSUM, which is where I work. The biggest barrier is people had no idea what we were doing. And I had to explain to my boss what our data science team was accomplishing for us. So our mission, our first step, and to answer the previous question again, so not only centralize platforms, but also just start. So we didn't know where to start as a PMO. We had a data science team, and we decided to start with natural language processing. And that's not sophisticated artificial intelligence at all, but it had started the conversation. And our challenge was, how do we deploy Cerner, our electronic health record, with 4,000 corrections and enhancements, and turn that into a message that we can give to providers at the deck plate or at the front line, so they know what's about to happen when all of a sudden on Friday they come into work, their electronic health record works one way, and on Saturday when they come into work, all of a sudden 4,000 changes have been made to their electronic health record. So we used data science, artificial intelligence via a primary natural language processing to examine all of those 4,000 corrections. Cerner had put a page-long summary of what each of those corrections and enhancements were. So there was a page of data for each of them. So rather than take the time of having a person read through each of those corrections and enhancements, we created a very simple vector of topic modeling to look at what those topics would be. And we came up with 7 topics. And then I was so excited, and I presented it to my leadership, and they were like, that means nothing to me. They were like, great. You know what our topics were? So we looked at 4,000 corrections and enhancements, and our topics were date time, server, and I believe the other one, and let me just make sure I get it right, was dialog box. So I can't take that message to the front line and say, hey guys, you're about to get a change in your electronic health record, and we're changing time, date, dialog box, and server. So I think that step that we're missing in that barrier, I like the work that's being done in contextual AI. I don't know if we'll have time to really discuss that and get into it, but it's one thing to be able to analyze a massive amount of data, but until that can be contextualized to senior leadership, it didn't really go anywhere, and it stalled out, and all that hard work kind of stalled. Now, we did some other stuff later that maybe I'll have time to speak about with that data, and with that natural language processing, but I think the biggest barrier is, how do we translate what we found to the people that are supposed to benefit from it?
Gil, anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. Well, yeah, I agree with a lot of those points, and certainly even defining what AI is for people, is sort of can help the ball start rolling as people start to decide about what investments they want to make in AI. I think maybe I'll bring one, a list of barriers, because we try to actually make a list of barriers, and we're going to publish those out from the AI Tech Sprint, where we engaged different companies and organizations around making tools with AI around some open data that we had. And we learned a number of interesting things. For example, one of the tools was to empower and enable 9+ million veterans to match with clinical trials and experimental therapeutics that could match for them, as well as 50+ million CMS beneficiaries, some of which are veterans as well. And what we learned from that is that there was actually an NLP, a natural language processing component, and the modeling that was done for that actually was unable to learn some things, like, for example, a number. It had like a million. Imagine a number of million has commas. It started parsing the commas as if it's like 1 and then like a 0 and then, not like a 1 million. So like really simple things that for us seem like common sense. These models by major commercial entities that people are using every day, we are able to provide them input so that this will affect how machine learning and AI will be used for millions of people, not just this clinical trial application. So a lot of things where basically common sense is you gain that from interacting with other people and seeing how the models can be changed, and then getting them better one step at a time.
Okay. And throw it down to you.
Sure. I totally agree with both your statements, and those are definitely roadblocks and challenges that we face in our day-to-day discussions and interactions in defining the problem and coming up with solutions. One thing that I have seen more often is that often the data is not available. The data is available, but then it's not available in the right format. You don't have the good collection of data that is relevant to a given problem. So there's certain thought process that needs to go even before we start delving into solving a problem, trying to figure out what are my key. Before you start cooking, you want to see, do you have all the ingredients or not? So similarly, when we get into creating a platform, we need to make sure that, do I have my key data sets and ingredients or not? And it's often a challenge in trying to even go across divisions within an agency and trying to get that data together, which would make sense to solve a problem. So there's a human problem in the data problem as well.
Okay. All right. Great. So we've kind of focused a lot on the actual interactions and the AI, interactions in the back office and things like that. But the next question I want to kind of put out there is areas where AI is actually, improving direct interaction with citizens, with patients, with, where the AI is actually interacting directly with them. And I'll start with you, Dr. P.
Sure. So we recently worked on a cyber exercise, and we were trying to understand as to when there were network issues, what was causing it. Was it because a system stopped communicating, or was it because there was some issue in the network itself? So getting all that data together and making it easy for the network engineers, the system analysts to figure out, hey, there's a problem. I didn't expect this particular protocol's communication to be happening. So we automated that. Definitely an expert network engineer can find that with other tools, but having a platform which alerts them, notifies them that we are seeing these anomalies and actions need to be taken, just highlighting stuff for them, that's crucial and a big time saver.
Okay. All right, great. So I'm getting a signal from the back of the room that we are actually getting very close to the end. So what I'm going to do now is just ask if each one of you, has any final thoughts that you want to put out there for everyone, and I'll start with Gil.
Well, I think right now is a really exciting time for veterans, for the public. There's a lot of opportunities to help the veterans, and in doing so also helping the public, which may be the caregivers, family around them, and so forth. And the opportunity is really there because, as I mentioned before, it's the largest integrated healthcare system, but also has unique assets like the largest genomic database in the world linked to healthcare data, 800,000. And so together, I think by working together, we can really make a big difference for our veterans by leveraging AI around special veteran and other priority areas. So that's what we're doing now, trying to interact with and see what those veteran priorities are by interacting with different partners. So if people have ideas or want to engage, now is the time that we're looking to do that. And it's a really exciting time, frankly. So thank you.
Thanks.
I'm very excited also. The charter for the Federal Electronic Health Record Modernization Office was signed this past week. And that means we're finally looking at things federally. That's DOD, VA, Department of Homeland Security, all putting their patient data in one central location, all using the same tenant where we can get those big data sets and start answering those questions. It's going to require, obviously, a lot of thought to data privacy and other issues when you bring that much data together. Who gets to look at that data? But I want to finish with an idea that we need to make sure we're putting the patient at the center. Your last question really challenged me, because when I'm looking at the projects that we've initiated on the DoD healthcare side, a number of them are, how are we going to make physicians better? I think we need to put the patient at the center and ask the patient, what is it you need artificial intelligence to do, and then go from there. Alex Holston, the neonatologist, I need an early warning system for sepsis. And we're doing a lot of great work combining the best and brightest from the DoD and VA to come up with the algorithms for sepsis to identify that in patients before they get septic. Alex Holston, the person, needs artificial intelligence to tell me when to stop eating pumpkin pie. That's what I need. I need the handheld to come up with an alert that says, hey, it's Thanksgiving. Remember last Thanksgiving when you had too much of your sister's pumpkin pie? Why don't you eat less this year? And if we could get the patient at the center of our artificial intelligence initiatives, I think we really have an opportunity here.
And finally, Dr. P, beyond pumpkin pie, what can you wrap up with?
I think that buck stops there, I guess. But yes, I mean, there's a lot of interesting data problems out there, and there are a lot of interesting tools, but it's all about trying to combine them together and coming up with really interesting solutions. And it's an iterative process, and we're always looking for good, interesting problems so that we can reap the benefit of all these algorithms and all these cloud infrastructure and everything that is available to us, maximize the benefit from it.
All right, great. At this point, we're going to wrap up the panel here. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank each of the panelists. It's been great and I hope very informative for our audience. It's certainly been informative to me. Thank you for joining us, and we'll move on to the next panel.